In the beginning, everything with my boyfriend felt perfect. For the first year, we had what I'd call a healthy, trusting relationship. We communicated openly, spent time together, and never had any major issues. He was the type of guy who never seemed bothered by anything, especially when it came to sharing things like his phone or computer. But lately, something had changed, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It started off small, almost unnoticeable at first. I'd pick up his phone, like I always had, just to search for something or check the time, and instead of shrugging it off like before, he started getting weird about it. "What are you looking for?" he'd ask, sounding casual but with a slight edge in his voice. I brushed it off, thinking maybe he was just in a bad mood, but over time, it happened more frequently. I wasn't snooping or doing anything suspicious, but the fact that he questioned me over something so simple made me feel a little uneasy. At first, I tried to convince myself I was overthinking things. After all, our relationship had always been solid. He'd never given me any reason to doubt him, and I didn't want to start now. But as the days went by, he became more protective of his stuff. If I grabbed his phone to check something, he'd ask why, or subtly angle it away from me. He started taking his phone with him everywhere, even to the bathroom. It was subtle, but enough to make me feel like he was hiding something. There was this gnawing feeling in my gut that I just couldn't shake. I wanted to trust him, I really did, but the way he was acting set off tiny alarm bells. I'd catch him quickly closing his messages or turning his screen away when I'd walk by. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd brush it off with a smile and say, "Of course, why wouldn't it be?" His reassurances didn't ease my mind though. In fact, the more he brushed it off, the more suspicious I became. But I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe I was overanalyzing, reading too much into his behavior. Maybe he was just stressed or wanted some privacy. After all, I knew relationships could go through phases. Still, the nagging thought that something wasn't quite right lingered, especially when I noticed he'd been texting more often than usual, always turning his phone away from me. I didn't say anything, not wanting to come off as insecure or controlling, but I couldn't ignore the change in our dynamic. The easy, open trust we once had started to feel strained. And then came the carnival, my best friend's birthday. It was supposed to be a fun day out with friends, a chance to relax and enjoy ourselves. Little did I know that by the end of that day, everything would come crashing down, and my suspicions would be painfully confirmed. It was supposed to be a perfect day. My best friend's birthday, a group of us going out to the carnival to celebrate. The sun was shining, laughter filled the air, and for a few hours, I let go of the uneasy feeling I had been carrying around about my boyfriend. We arrived early in the morning, and from the start, everything seemed so carefree. There was this buzz of excitement as we wandered through the carnival, going on rides, playing games, and just enjoying each other's company. For a while, it felt like things were normal again, like maybe I had been imagining the shift between me and him. My boyfriend seemed to be having a good time too. He smiled, held my hand, and acted like everything was fine. My best friend, as usual, was the life of the party, making us all laugh as we moved from stall to stall. For the first few hours, I was able to push aside the doubts and just focus on enjoying the day. We had been there for a solid 5 hours, and it was getting close to the time we planned to leave for a restaurant to continue the celebration. That's when things took a turn. My best friend excused herself to the bathroom, and the rest of the group scattered to grab snacks or go on one last ride. I stayed with my boyfriend as we waited in line to get cotton candy. Everything seemed normal until he casually mentioned he wanted to grab some chips from a nearby stall. I didn't think much of it at the time. "Sure, I'll be right here," I said, watching as he walked off. But after a few minutes, when I got the cotton candy and didn't see him back yet, I started to wonder where he'd gone. I wasn't worried, just curious, so I decided to go find him. As I wandered through the food stalls, I didn't see him anywhere. My heart started racing a little, more from confusion than anything. I scanned the crowd, looking for his familiar face, and that's when I walked by a row of photo booths. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a screen on one of the booths displaying the people inside, taking their photos. I almost didn't look, but something about it caught my attention. Then I saw them. It took a few seconds to process what I was seeing. There, on the screen, was my boyfriend, and my best friend, locked in a full-on make-out session inside the photo booth. I stood frozen, staring at the screen, unable to believe what I was seeing. My mind went blank, my heart dropped into my stomach, and the world around me seemed to slow down. My two most trusted people were betraying me right in front of my eyes, in a place where I should have felt safe. Shock and anger hit me all at once, like a wave crashing over me. My legs felt weak, and I could barely breathe. It wasn't just that they were kissing, it was the realization that they had been doing this behind my back for who knows how long. The betrayal from the two people I loved the most felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall right there. I couldn't let them see me like this, not yet. Through my haze of heartbreak, I pulled out my phone and started recording. I didn't even think about it. It was like my body went into autopilot. I needed evidence. I needed something concrete to show myself this was real, that it wasn't some horrible nightmare I'd wake up from. As I recorded, my hands were shaking, and I could barely hold back my tears, but I kept going, capturing every second of their betrayal. I felt completely shattered inside, but I couldn't let them get away with this. After I finished recording, I couldn't stand there any longer. I walked away as quickly as I could, tears silently falling down my face. I made it to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall, collapsing into quiet sobs. It felt like hours passed as I cried, completely broken by what I had just seen. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? How could they do this to me? I felt stupid, naive for not seeing it sooner. But after what felt like an eternity, I managed to pull myself together. I wasn't going to let them see me fall apart. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and left the bathroom, forcing myself to act like nothing had happened. I had a plan now. I'd gather more evidence, and when the time was right, I would confront them both. But in that moment, I had to face the rest of the day pretending I didn't know what I had just seen. Minutes later, my boyfriend showed up with a big smile, holding the chips he claimed had taken so long to get. "Sorry, the line was crazy," he said, still smiling as if nothing had happened. I forced the smile back, pretending everything was fine, while my heart was breaking inside. I was going to confront them. I just needed to figure out how. Sitting at that restaurant table was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Every fiber of my being wanted to scream, cry, or just walk out, but I couldn't. I had to sit there, with my heart in pieces, surrounded by people I could no longer trust, pretending like everything was fine. It felt like I was living in a nightmare, one that I couldn't wake up from. The laughter around me sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. My best friend, who I'd known for years, was sitting across from me, chatting and smiling like nothing had happened. My boyfriend, the person I had trusted with everything, was right next to me, acting completely normal, as if he hadn't just been making out with her less than an hour ago. They were carrying on like everything was fine, like they hadn't just ripped my heart out and shattered it in that stupid photo booth. I couldn't believe it. The sheer audacity of it all was mind-blowing. I sat there, barely touching my food, nodding along to the conversation, forcing a smile when someone made a joke. On the outside, I was holding it together, but on the inside, I was completely unraveling. My hands were shaking under the table, my chest tight with the weight of what I had just witnessed. It felt like my whole body was trying to collapse in on itself, and yet, somehow, I managed to keep up the facade. I had no choice. I couldn't let them know what I had seen, not yet. With every second that passed, it became harder to breathe, harder to stay calm. The pain was suffocating. I kept hearing the sound of their laughter, replaying the image of them kissing over and over in my head, like some kind of cruel loop. It was a special kind of torture, sitting there, pretending everything was okay, knowing full well what they had done. My mind was racing with questions. How long had they been sneaking around? How could they sit here, in front of me, and act like nothing had changed? Did they even feel guilty? I felt trapped in that moment, surrounded by my own pain and betrayal. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to escape the crushing realization that the two people I trusted most had betrayed me in the worst way possible. Every glance between them, every smile they exchanged, felt like a slap in the face. Did they think I was stupid? Did they think I wouldn't find out? I couldn't eat. The thought of food made my stomach turn. Instead, I focused on breathing, on keeping my emotions in check. I had to keep it together, just a little while longer. But inside, I was screaming. I was breaking. The weight of the betrayal felt like it was suffocating me, and yet, I smiled. I laughed at the right moments. I played the part of the happy girlfriend, the loyal best friend, all while knowing it was all a lie. It was the longest meal of my life. Every second felt like an hour. The sound of their voices made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to stay. I told myself I'd have time to fall apart later, time to confront them when I was ready. But right now, I had to play the role. It was all I could do to maintain some control over the situation. When we finally left the restaurant, I felt like I could breathe again, but the weight of what I had seen still sat heavy on my chest. I knew I had to confront them soon, but for now, I needed to hold on to my composure, no matter how much it hurt. The betrayal was still fresh, and the pain was unbearable, but I wasn't going to let them see me fall apart, not yet. After that painful day at the carnival, I knew I couldn't just let it slide. It wasn't enough to quietly break up with him and walk away from my best friend's betrayal. No, they had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let them sneak around, pretending like they hadn't shattered my world. I needed to gather more evidence, to make sure when I confronted them, they wouldn't be able to lie their way out of it. And when I did, I wasn't going to just expose them to me, I was going to make sure everyone knew the truth. I started small, playing it cool. Over the next day, I stayed close, acting as if everything was fine while keeping an eye on them. My boyfriend's phone was still a fortress of secrecy, but I didn't need it anymore. I already had the video of them in the photo booth. Every time I looked at them, the memory of their kiss played on a loop in my head. The anger burned inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm, to wait for the right moment to act. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became, this wasn't just about me. My friends, our families, they all needed to know the kind of people they really were. I couldn't let them keep living their lives, hiding behind their lies, fooling everyone who trusted them. So, I made a decision. I was going to expose them, publicly, and let the chips fall where they may. That night, I sat in my apartment, replaying the video of their betrayal one last time. My hands were steady as I typed out a message to both of our families, to our closest friends, and even to some of our mutual acquaintances. I attached the video with a simple explanation, *, I'm sending this because I want everyone to know why my boyfriend and I are no longer together, and why I no longer consider my best friend part of my life. They've been cheating behind my back, and this is the proof. I deserve better than this, and I'm moving on. *, I hit send. It was bold, I knew that. But I wasn't going to stay silent and let them control the narrative. They didn't get to walk away unscathed after betraying me so deeply. I wasn't going to be the one to quietly suffer in the background while they continued to live their lives as if nothing had happened. The response was immediate. My phone blew up with messages of support from friends and family. Most people couldn't believe it at first, but once they saw the video, the truth was undeniable. My friends rallied behind me, some even cutting ties with both my ex and my former best friend. Their families reached out, apologizing for what had happened, expressing their shock and disbelief. It was a whirlwind of emotions, but I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time since discovering the affair, I didn't feel alone in my pain. Everyone knew now. I wasn't carrying the burden by myself anymore. Meanwhile, my ex-boyfriend was completely blindsided. He had been at my former best friend's house when I sent the video, still playing his little game of deceit. I imagine they must have been in shock when they received it too, realizing the jig was up. When he came back to my apartment, he found all his belongings packed and sitting outside the door. I didn't want him in my space anymore, he didn't deserve to be there. The look on his face when he saw his stuff outside was almost satisfying. He knocked on the door, trying to talk to me, but I ignored him. He knew why. He had seen the video, and there was nothing left to say. After a few minutes, he gave up, gathering his things and leaving. It was the closure I needed, seeing him walk away for good. I didn't want his apologies, his excuses, I just wanted him gone. As for my former best friend, she tried to reach out too, but I had blocked her on everything. She didn't deserve an explanation or another moment of my time. The fact that she could betray me like that, knowing how much I trusted her, how much our friendship had meant to me, there was no coming back from that. She wasn't the person I thought she was, and I was done with her, too. In the days that followed, I went through a roller coaster of emotions. At first, I felt completely wrecked, the weight of their betrayal still fresh and raw. But slowly, as the days passed, I began to feel something else. Empowerment. I had taken control of the situation. I hadn't let them break me, hadn't let them continue their lies. By exposing the truth, I had reclaimed my power. I had the strength to walk away from both of them, leaving behind the toxic relationship and betrayal, and that was something to be proud of. I wasn't naive anymore. I wasn't the girl who would let people walk all over her. I had faced something that could have broken me, but instead, I came out the other side stronger. The heartbreak was still there, but it didn't control me. I was ready to move on, to focus on my own healing, knowing that I had done what was right for me. In the end, I wasn't just the girl who got cheated on. I was the one who fought back, who stood up for herself, and who refused to be a victim of their betrayal. And for that, I could hold my head high.